Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Sarah McCormick, and I'm here to speak about sports nutrition for peak performance. All of you are parents of swimmers on Blue Crush, and it's a pleasure to be here to help you support your swimmers with their nutrition. As a former swimmer and mom to young athletes, I understand firsthand the challenges that parents face in fueling their young athletes, as well as the challenges that middle schoolers and high school students face when they're trying to meet the demands of a busy schedule, training schedule, and have fun. I am uniquely qualified to talk to you today. I have bachelor's in exercise science and went on to get my master's in nutrition and specialize in pediatrics and sports nutrition. I am a registered dietitian, and after years of doing research and working with families, I decided to open my own practice to specialize specifically in pediatric sports nutrition. The learning objectives for this talk are to help summarize the key components and benefits of proper sports nutrition, identify barriers to proper sports nutrition, as well as some of the consequences of underfueling, and then how, as parents, we can model a healthy relationship with food and body for our athletes. As you know, athletes spend a tremendous amount of time training. They're in the pool, they're doing dry land. Some of them might be doing strength training exercises. They spend a lot of hours, and this is a high intensity sport. And so, just like they spend a lot of time training, it is also important to spend time thinking about nutrition and making it a priority that goes along with training. And so, we never really reach a perfect place with nutrition. It's just like training. We're never at the peak. We're always wanting to improve, train, work on different things. And so nutrition is the same. You don't strive for a perfect diet. You strive for what works best for you, what meets your individual needs, and how that is going to support your training and where you are with all of that. And so if I can help an athlete or a family find that balance between matching your nutrition with your training and your performance goals, that's where you can really maximize your peak performance and meet the goals that you want to make. Having a basic understanding of sports nutrition is helpful. This plate method is a great way to communicate nutrition to athletes. It shows the proportions of the food groups and how that relates to building a plate that's going to nourish them, that's going to fuel them, that's going to help them meet their performance goals. And so where we start with this is talking about the macronutrients. Where does the energy in our food come from? Well, it comes from the carbohydrates, the proteins, and the essential fats. All are necessary in an athlete's diet. And so the plate is a way to demonstrate that and visualize what that means for them. And so carbohydrate is our main source of energy for athletes, especially swimmers, a high endurance sport where you really need that quick energy. So talking about what are your favorite sources of carbohydrate? Grains, starches, fruits even are great sources of carbohydrate. And so how much of your plate to fill in with those carbohydrate sources. And then we talk about proteins, and this source of energy is what your muscles need to rebuild, repair, be able to benefit from the dry land, the strength training, the intense training that you do in the pool. Your body will need these proteins to rebuild and recover and get stronger. And so that can be animal sources, that can be vegetarian sources, protein from dairy products. All are great sources of protein, and wanting to fill about a quarter of the plate with protein foods at each meal. And essential fats are usually worked into your foods, but some might need to add fat. So oils, butter, different ways to add fat like cream cheese, condiments, and things like that. And then we talk about the nutrients. The micronutrients and the other nutrients like fiber are important for general health and also all the rebuilding that your body's doing after a hard training session. And so this comes from fruits and vegetables, but also all the other food groups. And each food group has a different concentrations of different minerals and vitamins. And one to point out is dairy, having a great source of calcium and needing that for your bones. And so just talking a little bit about that, and really what it comes down to is the variety and why you need each food group. And if you're needing to or thinking about cutting out certain food groups or types of food, really think about that and why, because what often happens is that you're cutting out more nutrition than maybe what the perceived benefit is. And so one reason I love the athlete's plate, the performance plate, in a way to communicate nutrition is because it is so inclusive. We're talking about what foods to include in an athlete's diet rather than what to take out. There's so much fear mongering in nutrition, and what they at this age might be seeing online is a lot of fear mongering and what foods to take out, which can be detrimental, as I was saying. And so this is a great way to be more inclusive and talk about what foods we can include. And it's really goes along with any type of eating pattern that you have at your home. Are you vegetarian? Do you, eat from a certain grocery store, different cultural foods? It really can be inclusive of all different patterns of eating. And it doesn't get too bogged down in the nitty-gritty measurements of food. And so I am a strong believer that athletes don't need to measure their food. They don't need to weigh their food. They don't need to look at calories. They don't even need to look at grams of protein. I think having this general knowledge about food and what nutrients are primarily found in those foods will help you make the decisions that are going to benefit you and eat in a way that's more relaxed, more fun, just less into the detail of it and easier. So once we know the basics of sports nutrition and what our body needs, we start talking about what a typical day looks like. How are these athletes going to have the structure throughout the day to make sure that their energy needs and nutrient needs are met throughout the day? And this is where parents, you can really be helpful. And that is, starting to implement that structure and help support that structure and send the reminders and all the things that I know you're probably already doing, but kind of seeing it like this in a way that is helping them internalize it and think about it and how they're going to make sure this happens, because you are not with them all of the time. And so this is where that relationship starts overlapping of being a support, but also instilling in them the skills they need to make sure this happens. And so what it is the importance of having those 3 meals throughout the day. So you have breakfast, lunch, dinner, using that plate method as much as possible. And then you have snacks in between, strategically placed snacks that are going to help them be consistently fueled throughout the day. So something with carbohydrates, something with protein, something just to bridge that gap between the meals and make sure that they're properly fueled. One addition I would say is that if you are also starting to do the morning trainings along with an afternoon training, you're going to want to remind your swimmers that they do need a snack on their way. It can be a piece of toast, a bowl of cereal, a waffle in the toaster. It can even be a drink. It can be a juice. It can be a milk, a yogurt, just something with carbohydrate to get that energy going, because it's been so long since they've eaten. They'll really get more out of training if they have that. And then in letting them know that hydration throughout the day is what is best. They can hydrate as much as they want after school or around training, but it really is that consistent hydration throughout the day that is going to be more of a benefit. So the top concerns for athletes that I see is mostly underfueling. So there can be a lot of different contributing factors to underfueling, and it can vary. It can be underfueling for the whole day, ending the day in a calorie deficit, or it can be ending the day, calorie neutral or adequate calories and nutrients, but that they've gone long periods of time during the day where they were underfueling. So maybe they skipped breakfast, or they skipped lunch, or they skipped a snack before training. Just that's the way I look at it when I work with athletes is, are we dealing with underfueling, and what type of underfueling are we dealing with? And so the contributing factors are, number one, time. Athletes are busy, parents are busy, everyone is busy, and so making this all happen can be quite a challenge. Having that structure in place, I find that the more it becomes a habit for athletes and parents to make sure that there are 3 meals, that there are 3 to 4 snacks throughout the day, the easier it is to do. And the easier it is for the athletes to start taking it on themselves, or certain ones, having the knowledge to know how much an athlete needs, how often they need to eat, what they need to eat. There's a lot that goes into that. And just feeling overwhelmed by all of this. It can be hard. It can be easy to just throw your hands up and go through the fast food again, just because it's easy, which there also can be nothing wrong with that. It just really depends on the family and the situation. Food insecurity can be another barrier. It can really be hard to feed a family, especially with the prices these days. And so really being able to utilize every penny and make the most of what you can afford, or resources that are out there, can really be helpful. And so here are 2 more. The training. The training can increase, and an athlete will need to know to increase their nutrition to go along with it. Or some athletes will do extra training and purposefully not compensate with nutrition, or just not know that they need to compensate with that. Lack of hunger can just happen naturally if you have an athlete that has a low appetite, or just really a disinterest in food, or might just be more particular about food, and it might be harder to find things that they are hungry to eat. That can be hard to meet an athlete's needs. But also, if an athlete is underfueling, or maybe purposefully underfueling, they can lose their appetite and just even have less of an interest in food, or also just feel like they don't need food if they're not hungry. That is always a concern, or just some feedback that I hear from athletes. And so now you can see we're kind of moving a little bit more into that diet culture, disordered eating realm of factors. And so this is where I see athletes that are implementing food rules for themselves. It's hard to believe, but I still see athletes that think that they don't need carbohydrates, or that they're bad and they should limit carbohydrates because of diet culture's messaging around that, and misinformation just about food groups and perceived dangers of certain foods. And so that really can be limiting to an athlete's diet when that starts creeping in. And it sometimes is based in this overall desire to change their body shape or size. And so that can lead to more restrictive eating patterns. And also social media influences, social influences, things like that can kind of start leading an athlete down that path. And it's important to recognize that and address it as soon as you can before it gets too bad. And here is just a picture of 2 athletes having lunch. Let's just pretend this is at school. One is enjoying pizza, and the other is maybe having some diet culture messaging in their heads, thinking that they need to have the salad, when in fact, if they are trying to fuel their bodies and get ready for practice after school, which one do you think is going to be better fueled? The pizza one, because they're having carbohydrates, proteins, fats. They're building up their energy stores, whereas the salad is getting some vitamins and minerals and maybe a tiny bit of protein, but they are certainly not getting the energy that they need, and they look miserable. So there's that. Looking for other signs of underfueling, these are more the physical performance signs. is important to point these out, because as a parent you can really start recognizing these things firsthand and helping your athlete recognize them for themselves. If your athlete is feeling physically tired, moody, feeling sore after practice for prolonged periods of time or just more regularly, and being more prone to injury, illness, maybe having some low iron measures from a doctor's appointment. And for female-bodied athletes, this is where we want to recognize and address any sort of like menstrual cycle irregularities or loss of it. This can lead to bone stress reactions and fractures too. Low bone density is something that can happen because our body is so efficient and so well versed at conserving energy and pulling what it needs for more vital functions. These are kind of the systems that we see starting to shut down for the sake of like our heart muscle and things like that. For performance, you can see a lot of decreased intensity and strength and power and endurance. You know, if you're going into a training session underfueled and you are tapping into your stores to get going in practice, you can see a pretty big decrease drop off at the end of practice because you're just spent. You have nothing left in the tank. And so proper nutrition can really help with that. And if you have an athlete that's putting the work in, doing all the extra training and working really hard and just not really seeing the payoff in competition, that can be another sign that that nutrition is just not meeting up with the training and being able to support that. I think it's important to mention REDS, relative energy deficiency in sport. I see that every so often. It's really a culmination of chronic underfueling and how it impacts the physical body. And so you see when that training goes up, but the fueling doesn't keep up with the training. And so there usually is some disordered eating involved, or reasons why that athlete is just not getting enough or not able to fuel. But you start seeing the loss of menstrual cycle and bone deficiencies and other health complications. So we see it in men and women. What are the benefits of proper fueling? They are endless, but I will just point out the growth and development is number one for me. I think that is most important with this age group, staying up on their growth chart, not seeing that dip off, and just being able to go through puberty and support all that body needs to do during this time. There's a lot of demands on your body at this age, and so being able to support that is number one. And just being able to have that energy. They do so much in a day: school, work, training, all the things. So there's just so much that they need to be doing. They have less risk of injury, illness, all the things that we talked about at the last slide. You know, we want them to have regular menstrual cycles, ability to build their peak bone mass. These are the years for them to do that. They're building up all the bone mass for their whole rest of their lives. And so they need the proper nutrition on board to be able to do that. Gut issues, I see a lot of improvement in gut issues. A lot of athletes think cutting foods out is the way to help a gut issue, but a lot of times it's the underfueling that's leading to the gut issues. And so on the performance side, we see an immediate improvement in the strength and power and endurance and just overall how they feel in training and competitions if they're properly fueled. Being able to mend that training and nutrition and get that full benefit and really be able to accomplish what you want to accomplish in the pool. So how as parents can we support our athletes? There is so much we can do as a primary feeder and provider of the family. And number one for me is really just emphasizing eating and making sure that that's a priority and helping support them to learn how to prioritize fueling themselves and eating enough. And so really emphasizing those 3 meals, 2 to 4 snacks, getting enough to eat at those meals and snacks, having enough variety, and most of all, having fun with food and enjoying food. Having family meals as much as possible. I know it's extremely hard with busy schedules, but even if it's on the weekends or for breakfast or just any meal that you can sit and eat with your child to really demonstrate and show them that it's important to you too to fuel your own body and be a part of that with them is so valuable. And getting your athlete in the kitchen to cook as much as possible, and just not even cooking, but preparing food for themselves, putting foods together to make a plate. And even if it's just starting to make smoothies or baking or any of that is great. Neutral food language. So this is where we're talking about food as if it's food and saying exactly what it is. We're not labeling it good or bad, healthy, junk food. Food is everything in between, and the more we can speak neutrally about food, it gives a more positive, neutral connotation about food, and it helps athletes be able to accept all types of foods, because really the reality is all types of foods can help fuel them in some different way. And so being open to that and will help their relationship with food in the long run. Prioritizing fueling as a component of training. And so this is more, as a parent, we'll do this, but it also is instilling in them that idea that this also takes work. We're doing our work in the pool, but we also need to do our work out of the pool to support our bodies so we can do the work, and it all just kind of works together. And we need to prioritize that. School meals and team meals and all of these kind of community building things can be a great asset to making sure that your athletes are fueled. School meals get a bad rap, and I'm here to say that they can also be very, very helpful for athletes. That long school day where it's the most common time for them to be underfueled. Getting food at school, bringing food and getting food at school can be a wonderful complement to making sure that they are properly fueled. Having team meals, having team parents be in charge of snacks and having options there for swim meets and competitions and things like that can be really fun too. So as parents, we can also do a lot to de-emphasize diet and weight talk if we see that popping up, or if we find ourselves talking about ourselves or our bodies or our friends or anything like that. We can do as much as we can to tamper that at home, because they get enough of that out in the world. But if you can have a nice, supportive, inclusive environment at home where all bodies are good bodies and we are emphasizing fueling our bodies and taking care of our bodies rather than trying to make our bodies look a certain way or be a certain way. So these are reasons that we would want to include our pediatrician, kind of reach out for them to get some advice, or maybe reach out to a dietitian like myself if you have questions about nutrition. And this is where you see weight loss, and this can be on the growth charts, or if you just feel like they're not building muscle or growing as much as they should. It's always good to kind of refer to that growth chart and see what their normal growth has been, and if they're keeping up with it or if they're trailing off. If they are more susceptible to injuries or having longer recovery times, that can be a red flag or reason to consult your physician. Loss of menstrual cycle, definitely. Seeing your athlete implement more food rules, being more private or selective around the foods that they're eating, cutting out food groups, talking about healthy eating, being more restrictive or extreme. You kind of want your ears to perk up. And if they're starting to obsess more about exercise and doing more additional training at home above and beyond what you think is appropriate for the age group. So I hope you have some ideas today to take home and think about how you can better support your athlete with their nutrition. I hope this is a great conversation starter for all of you and for your team. And I thank Gary for having me. I'm really excited to work with your athletes in the 2 upcoming sessions. And hopefully can be a great resource for all of you if you have additional questions, or if anything stood out to you as a topic of concern, or if your athlete comes home from the sessions and is really excited about nutrition and wants to talk more about it. I have my private practice and my contact information is here. I'm always available if you have questions over email. And there's a QR code to my booking page with more information with my phone number and different ways to get in contact with me and work with me. I do one-on-one virtual sessions with teens and their parents together. It always kind of depends on your age and where you're at with what your questions are. And the great thing is I do have reasonable self-pay rates. But I also am licensed in Oregon and Washington, and I can accept Regents Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance, and they have amazing nutrition benefits. They pretty much cover all costs of a nutrition visit, and depending on your personal plan, don't usually even need a referral from a doctor. So I get a lot of athletes and families just pop in for a initial visit to kind of work some things out and maybe even have a few follow-ups to really hone in on the questions that they have. So I would look forward to being a great resource and look forward to meeting with all your athletes. And thank you so much for your time.